you guys.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Yes, always.
So I was thinking that today we could explore, we're living in such an attention-focused economy. Like there's just so much about showing yourself, about being seen, about the impact that you have on the world. And I thought maybe we could unpack a little bit sort of exhibitionism and, just this need to be seen. I found it really interesting how there's just so much focus on putting yourself out there in the world, the sort of like digital persona that people are projecting out in the world. And there's this sort of there's an addiction to how much you're getting seen and appreciated. I think it's giving us dopamine hits every time you get a like, every time you're seen, and it's actually becoming, kind of economically linked too, because people are making money off making digital content. So I just thought maybe we could speak about psychologically what might be happening for people with this pressure and this need to be seen.
Well, I mean, so right off the bat, for the most part, right, there is an innate desire to be witnessed, right? And I think that now with the advent of technology, with social media, right, everybody wants to be noticed. I mean, here we are doing this, right? And we are trying to talk about things so that other people can hear it and other people can see it in a different way. But in doing so, we are also putting ourselves out there to be witnessed. So in a way, we are not too far from that own brand of wanting to be seen. But we do so with an intention that may be a bit different than what it is that you're bringing up right now. I think intentionality is a huge piece of this entire puzzle too. Like, what is it that people do in order to be seen?
Right.
And that's where maybe it can get a little wonky.
Of course, when I think about it, I always go back to, well, what is sort of innate about the human condition for validation, for acceptance, for even some form of status, right? And I think for most of human history, if we were not seen by our tribe, we were in trouble.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, our lives were threatened. We needed to belong, and to belong meant to be seen. It meant to be validated, accepted as part of a group, something bigger.
Absolutely. I think it is, innate to us and important actually, like from a developmental point of view, to be seen, to be cared for. Like you think about when you are a baby and you're most dependent and you're most needy. It's essential for you to be seen. It's essential for you to be cared for and to be, in fact, in the beginning, to be the most important object, perhaps, in the space, so that you can eventually develop into your own self. So I think that maybe some of the stuff that we're experiencing is that it is a natural thing to want to be seen. In fact, it's part of our development, and as you say, sort of from a societal point of view, but also from an individual point of view, to actually become a self. One has to be seen in a space. It's interesting, in South Africa there's this word called Ubuntu. I don't know if you've ever heard of this word, but the word Ubuntu means, and it's kind of like South African culture, it means I am who I am because of you.
I wanted to just backtrack a little because you were talking about the importance of being seen, just as a baby, and I feel like that feeds a lot into like attachment, right? So the more seen we are by our caregivers, the more likely we will develop a secure attachment, right? And so I hate that parenting advice. Let the baby cry. Let him cry it out,
Me too.
right? And I'm thinking, this is a completely helpless, dependent, living being trying to communicate something, and yet which, by the way, is the only form of communication.
Absolutely.
And so, when we don't validate, when we don't witness, what happens over and over?
So pretty cool. Dr. Bruce Perry, in his book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, has a case example there where
Exactly.
there was a child born. There were two brothers.
Mm-hmm.
One was born in their hometown, and the child was raised by mom, by dad, and a lot of the extended family that lived together. 3 years later, another child was born,
Mm-hmm.
but this time the family had relocated
Right.
to a place that was going to provide the father more opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they lost that family network, that tribe.
Right. Yeah.
So it was mom, the 3-year-old brother,
Mhm.
and then dad was always working.
Mhm.
But what happened was that the dad was never home. The mom would get overwhelmed
Mhm.
with the fact that the baby was crying, and she had the
Mhm.
3-year-old, so she gave herself quote unquote breaks.
Mhm.
But the breaks were, I'm going to feed the baby, I'm going to tend to all the physical needs, make
Mhm.
sure the baby's safe, but I will now take a break, and I'm going to
Right.
go for a few hours.
Right.
What do you think happened to that kid?
Right. Well, I'm sure that child was very unwell.
Very unwell. That kid
Mhm.
grew up, and fast forward early teens, the kid grew up. There was a situation where that kid committed murders.
Mhm.
Like he killed 2 little girls,
Mhm.
and in the trial, when he was sentenced, Dr. Perry says, he was by the child, and the child said, look at them crying. Why are they crying? I should be crying. I'm the one that's punished.
Mhm.
The child had never developed a sense
Mhm.
to understand another person's
Right. No
emotions or empathy.
Mhm.
So that kind of
Mhm.
relation, right? It leads to not just these, disorganized and insecure attachment styles, but it really messes with our ability to be able to understand another person's emotions.
Right.
To
Like the
read
mirror neurons, the mirror
Right.
neurons
Yeah.
that they talk about.
they're not reinforced.
Absolutely.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
right.
interesting because Donald Winnicott, who I adore his work because he challenged. I think he was the first to challenge psychoanalytic theory, where psychoanalytic theory is talking very much about the sort of the dynamics of what's going on inside a personality. Whereas Winnicott came along and he was like, well, I think the first controversial thing he said was there is no such thing as a baby. And everybody, this was like people were up in arms about it. Of course, he explained furthermore. He's like, whenever you're talking about a baby, you're talking about a baby and someone. A baby does not actually exist on its own. It exists in the relationship. And so he then began, exploring the impact of the primary caregiver. And those, I think he wrote in like 1960s or so. And he was focusing a lot on mother being the primary caregiver, and really exploring that relationship between the needed baby. And I think he speaks about 3 stages of development: the sort of like absolute dependence, right, when the baby is nothing but what that mother or that primary caregiver can provide, and then going into sort of like a relative dependence, and then eventually into like towards independence. Which is, and if you don't have that sense of being held and seen, so sure, it can go into very extreme cases as you've described, but I think we all see with our clients how, you may, if you've experienced neglect or you've experienced even a tiny amount of not being attuned to or connected with or attached, you can experience challenges, cognitive challenges, and challenges in the development of a sense of self. Because, you may then start, at a very young age, you might even start attempting to elicit responses from your caregivers that might begin to be even manipulative, even at a very young age.
Yeah.
Because I think there's this, of course you're going to protest, which is very natural too. Of course, the baby is going to call out for help. They're signaling, see me. And if they're not seen, eventually it moves towards despair and then detachment, which is what we kind of see when there's sort of where you might just give up if you're not seen. And then I think that perhaps maybe what happens with exhibitionism is perhaps, it's just like a sort of thought, that need to be seen kind of goes into the shadow. And so then we're sort of compensating in a way by putting it out there, to sort of desperately clinging to this thing, but it's kind of like a hide and seek, because you want to be seen, but you also don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
There's this like deep need to be seen.
Controlled witnessing.
Controlled
You get to see me on my terms.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it also feeds into, excuse me, as humans we have two two important sets of needs, right? The need for belonging, but also the need for authenticity,
Right.
right? And when we look at the social media environment, yes, we want the likes, we want that sense of belonging, and yet at the same time, at what cost does that come? Like, can we be truly authentic? Can we really be who we are in on this platform?
Right.
And what does that look like? You know,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure. I think that's where there's a disconnect. You know, I think there's this sort of false self
Yes.
that gets projected
Of course.
in the online environment.
So
Can be.
there was a therapist that I had many years ago who really helped me out, and I'm extremely thankful for him. He kind of put it in a way that really helped break it down in that moment. You know, there's saccharin, which is, you know, the artificial sugar, the fake sugar, things like Splenda, the sweeteners, and then there's actual sugar.
Right.
Everybody looks for sugar. Everybody looks for the real deal, but people settle for that saccharin, for that artificial, that pseudo, right? Same thing that's going on in like the dating atmosphere with like the, what do you call those? The
Swipes.
dating apps.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Swiping.
all these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It gives a little dose of that connection, a little dose of that, you know, oh, this feels nice. I enjoy this. But sometimes it does pan out, but most of the time it's just, okay, it fizzles out. I got my hit of dopamine. I got my witnessing. I got my recognition. This is quote unquote good enough. But then that emptiness kicks in.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not real. It's saccharin. It's not real sugar.
Yeah.
Well, and why can't we be authentic, right? I mean, is it the fear of social rejection, which, by the way, the brain processes the same way that it processes physical pain?
Right.
You know, I mean, who wants to feel that?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that also because of the fake self that you speak about, which I think is so interesting, is that we're sort of putting out these personas, and not everybody. I mean, I think that I do see some, you know, every now and again you see people on social media. It's possible to actually be authentic on social media, but you know, if you're chasing this kind of need to be seen, this need to be recognized and held, that's not a very safe space. You know, that's what I think about. I think about what is a safe space. Like, let's say you have experienced, you know, you have an attachment wound. You didn't get what you needed as a child. You might not even have a memory of exactly what happened, but you know, in your relationships are difficult for you, and you have a tension around the sort of wanting to be seen and not wanting, hiding, and then, you know, seeking this. So what happens for you? Like, what, you know, because though that little rabbit hole of going down into social media and trying to receive that attention is so inviting, it's so seductive, but it lands up in this empty place.
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk about what could help with this feeling of emptiness, this feeling of not being seen, this need to be seen.
Well, I have a radical solution, but, you know, get rid of your phones. We should just go back to flip phones. No, I'm just kidding. That'll never happen. But really, I mean, it is very concerning, the disconnect we're seeing. I mean, the rates of anxiety and depression in childhood and adolescence at a time when we have more resources, more understanding, more knowledge about mental health. We have probably one of the worst mental health crises among young people in history. So, and it did, by the way, start right around the time the smartphone was invented. Like, there's no coincidence. Jonathan Haidt talks a lot about that, you know, in his research. Like, it really, like, right around, I think, 2013, when the smartphone was put on the market, was right around the time we started to see these rates of mental illness creep up. And they've just been getting increasingly worse. So, I mean, I think that big problems demand big solutions, and sometimes people don't want to hear what those big solutions are. I know he proposes, like, you shouldn't even give your kid a smartphone till high school.
Right.
You know?
Well, you know that Australia is about to, I think next week, it's going into effect that they're banning social media for kids under 16.
I love that. I really do.
I think it's interesting. I really do, because, you know, of course, you're developing your identity at that stage, and there's just so much, you know, pulling you and drawing you out. So I think it's interesting. Let's see if they're able to do it and what the impact will be, because
it'd be interesting to
Well,
know.
I think, like everything else, like, we can't do this in isolation, right? Like, we have to get the support of our friends' parents. Like, are you
Yeah.
going to give your kid a phone? If not, we're going to do this together.
Yeah, because then you ostracized.
But you know what's interesting? When kids have been interviewed about this and they're told, you know, how would you feel? At first they're like, well, would I be the only one without a smartphone? They're like, no, this would be sort of a collective thing among your friends. And they actually welcome this idea. Like they're
Nice.
like, that would be great. So there's deep down, there is a yearning for deeper connection among young people. Maybe they can't pinpoint it,
Right.
but there is something there.
Well, I'm thinking that, you know, to be able to get rid of social media entirely is probably not possible at this stage. But to kind of educate people around what you spoke about, your intention, like what are you doing it for? Like let's get aware. Let's deepen our awareness or ask ourselves the questions. Like what am I posting this for? Like what's the point of me posting? Like just let's be curious about what our intentions are. And if they are really about, you know, we start to kind of explore and we realize, yeah, I didn't have a holding environment. I didn't have a really safe space to develop in when I was a child. Then let's talk about how we can create those holding spaces where you can get, you know, be seen and begin to see yourself. And I'm wondering a little bit about that.
Well, you know, kind of going back to the whole idea of like, what is a safe space, right? You know, the term safe space can mean so many different things. In a lot of my sessions, one of the things I talk about is, you know, what does it mean to have a safe space? And then what is it that that space elicits within you, right? A safe space is not just safe because of, you know, the acceptance, the lack of judgment, right? But these are things that are internally elicited, right? Like a safe place is a place where you can feel calm, comfortable, and safe, essentially, from threat, from judgment to a degree. But that ability to be able to elicit that, right? That safety is within yourself. So a lot of the big component of a lot of the things that we work with is how can we create your own safe place within yourself so that you can feel that kind of confidence to tap into the things that make you who you are.
Absolutely.
Which I totally agree with. But I think that this is where I say in my classes the first day, I say this is not an emotional safe space. You know, I said I demand respect in the classroom. I expect everyone to listen and to be respectful because we all come from different places. We all have different ideas and experiences. I said, but being safe is not how you grow. Like, you know, in order to grow, we need to learn how to sit with what's uncomfortable sometimes, you know? And I feel like there's been such a pushback against that. Like everyone wants to feel comfortable and safe. And I'm thinking, that's not the real world. Like, how is that serving you at all?
Where is your resilience at that point?
Absolutely.
Right.
And actually, you know, like going back to my fave old Winnicott, you know, what he explains about the sort of good enough mothering thing is that at some point the child actually has to be let down. You have to, how you develop emotional resilience or capacity to regulate emotionally is navigating when your needs are not met. And the whole sort of process of caring for a young child is a dance between meeting what they need and also setting limits in places that are hard for children. I mean, children cry and they protest, and it's this kind of dance between being met and also learning that you can survive when you don't get your needs met. So a safe space doesn't mean, I mean, a holding space, let's say, maybe not safe space. That word has become very
stigmatized.
I think it's.
I like the word holding space.
A holding space, like a holding environment where you can actually learn to grow into who you actually authentically are by having to face various challenges and grow up. Because a lot of the stuff that I work with, I always say, I think it's amazing to be an adult. Like an adult is, to me, you know, people are, you know, there's this whole thing, forever young, but a lot of us had struggles when we were a child. A lot of us, and now we're like processing. Now the sort of ball is in our own court. We are now the adults, and we can start to make decisions and make changes and create our lives in ways that really bring health and satisfaction to us.
You know, you may not be responsible for the things that happen to you, right? That's 100%, right? Like when we're infants, when we're kids, we are victims of causality, right? And then as we get older, we do become responsible for how we respond to the triggers that we are exposed to, like the things that elicit anger, frustration, fear, these things, right? Joseph Campbell wrote in his book, the treasure you seek is in the cave that you fear to enter. So when you feel that fear, where are you going to feel that fear? In the zone of discomfort.
Right.
You're going to have to put yourself in that kind of place.
I like that though, because I mean but that in and of itself can feel controversial, even in a therapy space, like asking a client to take more accountability and responsibility for their life experience, and I feel like it's much easier to just kind of feel, and I don't mean this just in terms of clients, I think for all of us, like it's easier to point the finger. It's easier to feel like we're a victim of circumstance, you know? But how is that empowering at all?
Yeah. Well, what's your goals? What are you trying to? Because sure, we might reenact those situations over and over again until eventually we begin to realize that I can begin to develop security inside myself. I can become. What is it going to take? It's hard work. We know it's hard work to develop new neural pathways and new possibilities inside oneself where we can actually be our own, safe space, where we can be on our own side at least.
But that's just it. Like, we know it's hard. We know it's going to take a lot. And it is doable. It is possible.
And by the way, it's the only way, right? I mean, it's the only way out.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Through.
Yeah, it's so true. The only way out is through. You can't over it. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. Yeah.
Right.
In EMDR, when we're working on with somebody that is going through a trauma or anything like that, right? We develop a safe place, which is essentially a place that they can go to in their mind that is going to provide them a sense of comfort and calm to regulate, right? So we got hyperarousal, hypoarousal. We want to stay within that window of tolerance. So it gets them from these states back into a window of tolerance where they can be okay. The container is designed to kind of help store a lot of that negativity, right? Anything that may be coming up is kind of like, okay, I can handle that later with my therapist, right? In a safe environment, we can unpack that. But the other thing is a resource and going to like the tunnel, right? If you're going through the tunnel, you're still gonna have the light from behind you until you get to the middle. The middle of the tunnel is always the darkest. That's where the most fear comes in. But that's also the most important time to tap into a resource that's not gonna push you, but pull you towards the other side of that tunnel.
Yes.
So kind of tying everything together, like people crave to be seen. People want to be witnessed. If you don't feed that in an adaptive way, it comes out in the shadow. It'll come out in exhibitionism or other tendencies, right? So how do we provide in our professions? How is it that we can provide people with a tool, something, a resource, right? Even you, right? What is it that you would want to help you go through that tunnel? What is something that we can tap into to provide everybody with something?
Yeah, and I think that one exercise that I really love is this idea of kind eyes. Creating, doing a visualization, putting yourself in a safe space, and then imagining that there are kind eyes looking at you. Like imagining that maybe there's a pet, maybe there's some people or friends, and just imagining their kind eyes on you and seeing how, I'm curious about how do you respond. Maybe it's too intense, the kind eyes, but you can look away because you have agency. So, or can you look? Can you actually receive? So that's something, just kind of imagining, using that sort of imagination that their kind eyes looking at you. I also think about things like, being seen is about being recognized. It's about being validated. Like, who am I? So I love things like even, sure, if you have access to therapy, a therapeutic relationship is an amazing container to be seen and to be held as you kind of grow into yourself. But if you can't be, things like making a collage, like of things that I like, things that I don't like, all the things that we can do, kind of make a playlist of music, your music. This is music to be seen to. This is music that I see, that is me, that resonates with me. These are things that I think that we can do on our own to create spaces that we feel seen, that recognize who we are, that validate.
And also, I mean, I think with all of this, like, we have to be mindful of what we take in, right? It's not just what we put out there, but like what we're taking in. And one of the suggestions I make to clients, especially young women, because young women seem to be most like they use social media more frequently, and they use it for social reasons more frequently. But how are you using social media? Get rid of everything that makes you feel bad on your social media. Like,
use your agency.
yeah,
Change
like
the algorithm.
change it. Like, what if you were to just scroll your feed and see nothing but things that actually help to enhance you?
Right.
And I'm not saying this is a way of denial, because I just talked about the importance of being able to sit with discomfort. But there's like inviting discomfort into your life. Like, yeah, I'm gonna compare myself to this person I see on social media and feel extra bad. And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
but suffering for the sake of suffering is not useful at all. There's no
Right.
utility in it. You always say this, and it always rings in my head. You have to learn how to suffer with grace.
yes.
Always.
100%.
And
Right.
and to this day, it still rings true every day when I see somebody in front of me and I see them suffering. I always think, I hear a little page in my head just like suffer with grace, and I'm like, okay, how can we suffer with grace? How can we take some utility out of this pain? Make it make meaning from it, like Viktor Frankl's learned, right? We learn to make meaning out of our pain, and that is what gets us to that next level.
Absolutely. To
Yeah.
welcome that unwelcome. I think that's Pema Chodron.
Right.
This is
right.
welcome the unwelcome.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.